webinar series. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this event. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and recognise and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. Now, just a few pieces of housekeeping before we get started. Can I just remind you during today's event to keep yourself on mute, but I would encourage you to keep your camera on. See, today will be a little bit different to some of the events that we've held in the past. We really expect it to be highly interactive and we want you to be involved. So get a pen and paper ready. We're eager for you to share your own personal experiences, but like always, if you do have any questions, please send these through in the chat box and we'll look to get to them a bit later on. Look, I'm really excited today that we're joined by Jonathan Cawte, sports scientist, leadership coach and founder of Unbreakable. He'll delve into what leaders can learn from the COVID pandemic to create brighter futures for their employees and organisations. I actually had the pleasure of studying with Jonathan back at the turn of the century, which is a bit scary. And whilst our careers have taken very different paths, he's continued to be a real valued resource for me and our team as we've navigated and adapted to the ongoing impacts of COVID. Now, I think it's fair to say at some point over the past 18 months, we've all felt a sense of pandemic fatigue, and it's something which continues to plague organisations and employees right now. See, during these unprecedented times, we've endured a global pandemic, a massive economic crisis and widespread social unrest. Layer on top of that forces that are fundamentally reshaping society, such as technological development, business model disruption, inequalities within society, as well as workforce automation. And it's clear an epidemic of stress has been building with COVID-19, the tipping point. When you ask people how they're doing and get beyond the standard responses, I'm fine or I'm managing through it, a deeper level of challenge emerges. I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I'm lonely, I'm completely burnt out. I've lost my sense of optimism. I'm not sure how longer I can go doing this. And these experiences go beyond anecdotes. See, 75% of employees in the US and close to a third in the Asia Pacific have reported symptoms of burnout. And European nations are also reporting increasing levels of pandemic fatigue in their populations, with the number who rate their mental health as very poor more than 3 times higher than before the crisis. And mental health issues are still likely to rise. Whilst positive news about highly effective vaccines gives us new hope, it doesn't change the fact there are a lot of people struggling, and that may be the case for many months to come. This is about more than just coping. As Albert Einstein said, in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity, and we're already seeing the potential for growth and renewal from those organisations that have started to operate differently during the pandemic. While forging ahead with something new definitely introduces its own uncertainties, it also offers the promise of building on pandemic-related accomplishments, like moving to more flexible and innovative working models, just like we all are here today. Implementing new technologies in weeks rather than months or years, empowering teams and making faster decisions amid uncertainty. Perhaps most importantly, companies are waking up to the need for greater empathy and compassion to create a workplace that can unleash the full potential of their people, even beyond the crisis, which leads us to today's topic. So without any further ado, I'll now hand over to Jonathan to unpack how to overcome pandemic fatigue and re-energize your team for the long run. Morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. I can go home. That's a big summary, right? Well articulated the problem. Okay, so that is the problem, but let's start on a very different foot. All right, let's start on a little bit of positivity. I want everyone to open up the chat and actually write down the answer to this question. So what are you looking forward to most, and what are you looking forward to doing when lockdown ends? All right, and just because I'm a health guy, don't think I want a health answer. What are you looking forward to? What's the most fun thing that you want to do once the lockdown ends? Wow. Okay, I thought seeing family is good, but get married is even better. Golf trips, restaurant and pubs, holidays, seeing family, being with people, travel, barbecue with friends, right? 100%, like enjoying footy with a beer, seeing your daughter. Awesome, cool. So the title of this webinar is about energizing the team for the long run. And what I want to do is introduce you to a topic or a framework called PERMA. Hey, John, I see you there. Yeah, we're going to start our PT sessions once this lockdown ends. But all right, PERMA. All right, so this is the definition of psychological well-being. It's the science of what people enjoy in life. And look, we've been locked up so long that, you know, the thing that's going to you gravitate to most is probably something that's going to give you this first thing, which is positive emotion. But when I go through the P, the E, the R, the M, and the A of PERMA, I want you to look at what you want to do after lockdown and see what categories it fits into, right? And then I'm going to encourage you to actually try and design a life post-lockdown, and you know, you can even start tomorrow. Why wait till post-lockdown? But to design a life that has these 5 elements, because it's what gives you psychological well-being. All right, so going through it. So we're starting with the P, right? So positive emotion. Now this is simple. This is just the smiling and laughing and all the things you do for fun. So everything that you put down there in the chat, I can see gets positive emotion. But to then design like psychological well-being for the long run, you also need these other elements. And so the next one's engagement. And here we are at the Tigers. One of the easiest ways to get engagement, and engagement is defined by the rest of the world dropping away and falling away, that you're so engrossed in the activity that nothing else matters. Now, when you observe something like a football match, you can get engagement, but you get even more engagement if you're actually doing the activity. So you don't have to play professional football, but maybe it's a sport, maybe it's a creative thing, maybe you like playing music, like playing with your kids, like doing anything where the rest of the world drops away and you're totally engrossed in the task. And I'd encourage you to think of something like that, which gives you engagement. Another thing that, you know, we're craving at the moment is relationships, and like the relationships that make like the greatest things in life, like actually even greater, right? So yes, it's important to have friends who are there for you in hard times, but it's actually even more important to have friends who enhance life. And I can see there in the chat, like a lot of the things that you're craving are things with other people. And that's, you know, really important and something that's been hampered here in lockdown. All right, then the fourth one is meaning. All right, so this football club is a way for people to get meaning. Like meaning is about serving something that's bigger than yourself. All right, and then Luke and I were talking about the mission of like the West Tigers organization, and it's about enriching the lives of the community. All right, and then so looking like for ways for you to get into the community and enrich the lives of others is something that gives us positive, gives us psychological well-being. Okay, and the last one is achievement. Now, we get this in our work lives, or I hope we get this in our work lives a lot, but in our leisure life, like how do we get achievement? How do we feel progress? Some people might play a sport like golf, like John Renshaw, my client, who loves playing golf. But other people like might learn languages, or they might learn a new skill. Like another client was teaching his daughter how to ride a bicycle. Like that was an achievement for both of them that they shared together. All right, so that is this, like if you want to know the essence of this presentation is about how to get PERMA. All right, and why I'm actually interested in this is that, look, all of what I'm going to share with you was started when I was coaching people to lose weight. All right, and what I know is that if I can connect someone's physical life to actually having more PERMA, I don't have to worry about motivation. They just want to do it. Now, if you ever had a 6-year-old kid who just learns to ride a bike, they get PERMA, they get positive emotion, they engagement, all their friends have bikes, it's a sense of freedom and it's accomplishment. And so what happens with that 6-year-old is they want to keep doing it over and over and over again. And so that's the same thing here with people's physical life. And I'm so like bullish on this framework that I'm now stepping into organizations and helping organizations create PERMA in their work lives. So if you want a work team that is turning up every day, motivated and energized to do their best work, I'm going to encourage you to insert PERMA into their vocabulary. And then, so this model was created by Martin Seligman, whose name's there at the bottom. He created it maybe 20 years ago, but then he updated it in 2012. And what he added to it was the H. So what he realized was that physical health actually increases PERMA. It actually increases psychological well-being, right? That's not revolutionary, probably. You probably logically understand that. But then that's essentially what I've based my career around. So this is my religion, that your physical health is the foundation of your mental performance and emotional well-being. Like, yes, I can coach people about exercise, but there's something bigger at play, and it's this, right? So if we then step back, and Luke gave a good snapshot of what is happening with COVID, all right? And then let's talk a little bit about, a few trends or a few things that I've seen. All right, so I mentioned that if you were here early, that Andrew and I were having a conversation in January 2020. Now, he does strategy at IAG, and he was telling me about this thing called COVID that was in the States and China, and his modeling was saying that half the population in Australia potentially could get COVID. I told him he was dreaming. I was like, this is not going to happen. It's an American thing. But he was warning me, and there was a threat, and eventually we had impact on, here, you can remember the date, 16th of March, we all locked down. But if you remember that in lockdown 1, there was a heroic response. Like, we were thinking about how well the Australian government was doing and how bad the situation was overseas. And then, so there was this honeymoon period where there was community cohesion, but it just didn't last. All right. And so I don't know when the bottom of that curve is, but I can tell you now, we weren't fully recovered when lockdown 2 happened. Now, there potentially could be someone from Melbourne here who's gone through lockdowns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But like, the point here is that when lockdown 2 happened, we weren't fully recovered. We weren't coming from a place of empowerment. We're still working through the grief of the initial impact. Right. So something I heard a lot was that lockdown 2 has been harder than lockdown 1. All right. So if you think about lockdown 1 and think about our expectations, we had no expectations about time. We didn't have any expectations about what we imagined it to be. And our expectations compared to others was that we were doing okay in this country and the rest of the world was on fire. Lockdown 2 happened and we expected to be out of this. We've already gone through this for a year. We expected and imagined like life back to usual, like normal, and we had to cancel everything. Right? And then when the rest of the world was opening up, we were locking down. So there was actually the 3 perfect triggers for people to be unhappy. All right. And then in our work lives, like McKinsey were doing research on what was going on with our productivity and performance. And so half of the workforce actually increased their productivity during COVID. And that half was marked by fast decision-making, a really rapid adoption to technology and innovation. And really importantly, they were able to create a sense of belonging in their at-home work environments. Like, alternatively, the other half that actually saw a drop in productivity and performance were crippled by slow decision-making, like really slow adoption of technology and innovation. And most importantly, and this was the most important part for this half, they weren't able to create a sense of belonging and connectiveness in their at-home work environments. Right? And whilst that all was happening, so we've got emotional fragility, the perfect recipe for unhappiness, and then like wavering work environments that had differing effects on performance. We've got a market forces that are propelling us through more agility and more speed, right? So it's just I don't need to tell you this, but it's just a calamity of like pressure that's going on in the workforce, and our workforce needs to adapt. All right. And what's interesting is that we're here in rugby league land, and rugby league as a game actually saw the same thing. So if you think about the rules of the game changed a lot. It's a different game to when it was before. And the teams that did the best actually had to innovate. Like the rules were created so Melbourne didn't dominate because they were dominating the wrestle. We made it faster, and Melbourne actually still dominated the point scoring records for the year, right? And I can see like the parallels, like these teams who did the best were able to respond and have like these three players made really rapid decisions, innovated. If you watch how Melbourne and Penrith especially behave off the field, they have a great sense of belonging. Like their organisation as a whole was really agile. And we're going to hear a little story about how quick like the clubs had to respond through like changing where everyone lived and hosting the game up in Queensland. Now, why I picked these three clubs is that these three clubs, it's not surprising that they were the ones who thrived because they have a reputation for developing their players. Like these three like champion players like didn't come to the club with a full set of skills. Like they got developed and they were led by great leadership and great coaching to actually rise to this challenge, which was the season of 2021. So if development is the answer to thriving in an uncertain environment, like what do you have to develop? And I apologize for the poor quality of this image and I'll expand it in a sec. But this is 56 areas of development that McKinsey have identified for the future of work. Like work is not going to be the same. And we know that like new normal is not, we're not going back to a new normal. It's going to be different. So if you look at those four domains, we've got cognitive and digital, and then self-leadership and interpersonal. Now, why I've said it that way is cognitive and digital are like technical skills. Like they're things that you can teach, learn, and, you know, put people through courses, and you can send like your whole team through like a digital literacy course, and you know they're going to have that skill. But self-leadership and interpersonal are different. Like you can't teach these things. Like if I expand it now, I picked like the most human of these like skills, and you'll see no matter how good your education is, you just didn't do a course in self-confidence. Like you didn't do a course in coping with uncertainty or grit and persistence. Like you just didn't. But we're expecting our workforce to have this, and like we like the new conditions are actually demanding the workforce to have this more and more. All right, so right there, like that was a lot of like information there, but I want to pause. All right, I want to pause, and I want you to have a think about. You can either think about this as your team or as you individually. I'm not going to ask you what it is, but I just want you to commit to one thing. I want you to look at that list and think, what is the one that in the next 18 months is either going to benefit your team or yourself the most in your work performance? And I want you to put it into the chat. Again, there's no wrong answers, but I just want you to, we're going to pick one and we're going to hold it all the way through this presentation. So once you have it, just typing in, there you go, energy, passion, optimism. Thank you, Andrew. Raymond, fostering inclusiveness. Cool. Achievement, orientation, excellent. Thanks, Dan. Have we got any others? There's no wrong answers. They're all good. Motivating different personalities, inspiring trust, interesting one. Self-confidence, self-motivation, wellness, of course, we're going to definitely cover that. Courage, risk-taking, and one more. Self-motivation and wellness again. Okay, epic. Cool. All right, so I get you to write that down because it's going to disappear in the chat, but I want you to write that down because we're going to come back to it. All right, so as I explained to Kate and Luke, every time Dane Laurie scores a try, well, that's a checkpoint. So the first checkpoint was to pick a development goal. All right, so it'd be really nice if we could develop on our development goal in the Tigers' new high performance center, which I don't know when it's open, but it must be opening very, very soon. But the rest of this presentation is about how do you physically, mentally, and emotionally prepare to perform, and how can you physically, mentally, and emotionally prepare to achieve that goal that you just set. All right, so this one, as we flick, is going to first tackle the physical, and we're going to go quite quickly through this. Now, It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, an executive, or a young child, there's only 3 elements of physical well-being, and they're recovery, exercise, and nutrition. So you need a pen in your hand and you got to score yourself. You're not going to share this score. This is just for you. But if you're looking to upgrade your physical well-being, you need to do one of these things. Or no, you'll get a point every time you do one of these things. That's a better way of saying that. All right. So if you got 7 hours of sleep last night, that's the first element of recovery. Give yourself a point. The second one is a mental practice. Now, yes, I do have a dog picture here, but the most highly skilled part of mental practice is meditation. Maybe journaling, maybe writing it down, or like the lowest level is just going for a walk or even playing with your dog. But at the end of the day, you need to detach from the problems you're trying to solve at work and then enter the recovery state when you go home. So in the last 24 hours, if you did 20 minutes of detaching without your phone, you get a point. Next one is physical restoration. Now, normally I'd lean towards things like massages and beauty treatments and facials and saunas and spas and all swims and all this other stuff, which you can't do, right? But hopefully most of you have a bath, right? And something you could do to recover is like taking a relaxing bath, right? But is there something that you've done in the last 24 hours that physically makes you feel good? Now, athletes are really good at this. Like that's their thing. Like they make their body feel good to perform. But like, you don't have to do it to the nth degree like they do, but you need to have a way to make your body feel good. And maybe if you did something like that in the last 24 hours, give yourself a point. Social support. Now, Tiger Woods, there's a story that I like to tell about his best friend, Joe McNamara. Like, this is not his coach. This is just his friend. And so they would have conversations over breakfast or on the golf course, and he would just say, hey, I think I'm doing this. I'm like, am I? And that is part of him releasing like the pressure of his role, right? So if in the last 24 hours, if you had a conversation with a friend, like not a family member, a friend that released the pressure of like whatever you're trying to achieve at the moment, give yourself a point. All right, and the last one with recovery is environment. Now, looking at the natural environment like trees, clouds, and water actually relaxes your brain. So if you spent some time in the natural environment, give yourself a point. Right, so now it gets simple. Exercise. If you stretched in the last 24 hours, give yourself a point. If you did something hard, either aerobically or like with resistance, give yourself a point. All right, and then if you did something with movement that is fun, it could be a hike, canoeing, or riding a bike, give yourself a point. Exercise can't always just be in the gym. All right, then we'll probably get some few smiles with this one. All right, so if you had an alcohol-free day, give yourself a point. If you ate 2 cups of plants, right, that's fruits and vegetables at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, give yourself a point. If you drank 3 liters of water, give yourself a point. And okay, so these are supplements, and you don't have to supplement with protein, but you need to get enough. And if you want me to help you calculate if you get enough protein, just reach out. But also the supplements I recommend are omega-3, vitamin D, and a probiotic. And if you just so happen to have those in your cabinet, give yourself a point. All right, and the last one, no junk. So processed foods, sugar, for some people, bread. Like if you ate no junk, give yourself a point. All right, so that's your player readiness score. Now, most people think like what's unique about the player readiness score is that there's no perfect number. This is not about getting full marks. This is about little wins that build momentum. Now, like I have a lot of experience coaching people who have like neglected their health. And when you're building people from the ground up, just little wins and like just getting the first player readiness score and just getting the second and third and fourth, like they're little momentum starters, which elevate people's confidence and get people started when, you know, the challenge is high and the results are low. Cool. So that's the physical part. And like you probably didn't learn a whole lot too much there. Like that's from pretty standard sort of stuff. But then here's something that's a little bit left field. I want you to think about how you can practice your development goal in your physical life. All right. So if you picked like, so obviously self-motivation and wellness, this is the goal, right? But something like driving change and innovation, that's something that the work team need. Like we need people to drive change and innovation. You want to practice driving change innovation, try and change your food. Like, try and change how you exercise. Courage and risk taking, like, do something new. Like, it doesn't have to be daredevil stuff, but like, if you've never been in a canoe before, why don't you practice just stepping up to that challenge and then getting into a canoe? Like, and this is what Unbreakable is about, is that you keep stepping up to challenges and keep actually exposing yourself to uncertainty. And the more you expose yourself to uncertainty and feel the chemicals in your body and then react, well, then you expand and expand the limits of what you think is possible. And it's something you can practice in your physical life, which then can extend to your work life. It's hard to practice that in your work life. It's hard to get like practice in non-live situations. This is something that like I believe and see with my clients, is that when they practice in their physical life, it extends to all parts. All right. So inspiring trust is the interesting one. And I feel that inspiring trust is about like saying you're going to do something and then like stepping up and doing it. The interpersonal ones need a team. So maybe it's buddying up and helping someone who like is like, and doing the physical stuff like together, right? Collaborating, coaching, empowering, like fostering inclusiveness. Like, if you can do this in a team environment, you can really develop these skills. All right. So that's the physical part. And look, that could open up a whole lot of questions. I'm going to fly through this, and I hope we can have a discussion there at the end. So if you've got a question, either put it in the chat and we'll come back to it, or like write it down and I'll give you some time once we get through the other two sections. All right. So these things are what I call complex change, right? They're complex challenges. And when you're tackling a complex challenge, you can't beat people through with intensity. Like, you can't just tell people like through fear that they need to do this. Like, as a coach, what I do and what I coach leaders to look out for is that you need to analyze your team in front of you and think of these three beliefs. Like, can you do it, or can they do it? Do they know how? And do they believe it's going to be worth it? All right. So what I want you to do, and again, this is not going to be a shared one, but I want you to really hang on to it, right? So in the last 18 months, what's the most complex problem you've solved? Now, if I was in front of a bunch of Americans who are really good at saying they're proud of stuff, like, I would ask them, what's your proudest achievement? All right. So COVID obviously threw a whole lot of challenges at us, and there's a whole lot of complexity, and I'm sure you've triumphed in some way and somehow, and it should be celebrated. All right. So when you've got it, I want you to write it down and think about it. But I'm going to get Cawte to tell the story of the Tigers and what they went through, this complex change of like how the game changed in 2021. But as she tells her story, and as I ask her questions, I want you to answer those questions in your mind or on the piece of paper in front of you. All right. So welcome, Cawte. So
hello.
There we go. Welcome. Okay. So believe you can do it. That's the first primary belief I'm looking for. And so I broke that down into 3 skills. You need to have optimism, you need to have courage, and you need to have grit. And if you master all those 3, then you will have that belief. Right. So tell me about the day the game changed.
Yeah. So I guess with the squad and everybody moving up to Queensland, our team were told that we had to figure out how to execute logistically game day operations in another state. But the catch was that they weren't sending any operational staff to Queensland. So we had to lean on the football staff, who are very skilled in what they do, but just not, I guess, in what we do. So that was probably the day that I got faced with a pretty big challenge.
Yeah, perfect. Well put as well. They're good at what they do, but not good at what you do. Good. But definitely you had to believe that you can create a different future. Like, you had to, it was forced upon you. All right. Then tell me about like how you had to push through self-doubt and just start. Like, I feel that it's more about you just had to start.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you have that little voice in your head that just goes, how are we going to do this? We've got X amount of signage that, correlates with over, we've got 80 corporates in our database that get XYZ. So we had all of this stuff that we had to execute in Queensland. And it's just almost, you get a bit of fear around how am I going to do this? But I just had a voice in my head that just said, don't worry how, just do it, just get it done.
Yeah. And you told me a story about like, it was on the bus, like when you found out everything was on the bus, it just went like, so yeah, definitely sometimes these first stages are really quick, right? But then you get into this one, right? And then tell me one thing that went wrong.
I got a call from Suncorp Stadium to say that the team that I had arranged to bump in our signage had used the wrong adhesive and had ripped paint off a very large wall, a lot of paint. So that was something that was obviously very much out of my control, but something that I just had to handle in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So handle, like in my words, is that you had to lift your effort. Now this is pretty basic for people who are, tackle hard problems. These three things happen real quick. But you can imagine if you've got a team in front of you and you're facing a big challenge, if they fall down in one of these skills, you have to build them up. You have to build the belief that they can do it. But if that's cool, well then we move to the next belief, which is believe they know how, right? So I've broken that down into 3 skills, and that you can't, it's taking total responsibility for the result. Playfulness is finding the balance between play and discipline, and mastery is not an end destination, but stepping into the shoes of a student and constantly in a state of learning and growth. So tell me about who's responsible for your stuff, who's on your team. It sounds like it's just you.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have a team.
Yes.
There is our corporate team, but it's me that's responsible for executing that. So that job,
exactly. Basically the buck stopped with you with a lot of the things that you're trying to execute. Yeah. But then trying to execute them, you're trying to do it from a different state. All right. So we talked before we were on air here that you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Yeah. So rolling through with the punches was something that that I can see you had to do. And what sort of punches were you copying?
Well, I think even just referencing jiu-jitsu, there's always a move to a move. There's always a counter to a counter. So you get put in a position, there's always something that you can do to move forward or progress, and just kind of adapt to those kind of situations. So I guess just, with everything in Queensland, there was always, a connection that I could make within another staff member up in Queensland that could provide support, and there was just always just that expanding that network and finding ways to I guess more efficiently execute things from another state.
And more efficiently. So what is something that you learned through this process that you can help you in 2020 to 2022?
Yeah, I think the one thing that really surprised me just was technology. Being able to do what we did, we wouldn't have been able to do it without the technology that we had. I have used, we're all very much up to date with the phones that we use and the laptops, but just even from the software of Google Share Drives and sending photos and doing Zoom calls and all of that, just having to use that in the last month, I'll definitely be putting more of those processes in place next year, even just in Sydney, because it's just silly that we don't use it more often.
Yeah, exactly. So again, looking at your situation, to the sort of broader audience now, in your challenge, you had to take responsibility for result. You would have had to find the balance between play and discipline to get it done. And then just like Kate, you would have had to learn and adapt to new different ways of doing things, and are constantly learning new ways of doing things to actually believe that you know how. All right. And then so the last one, right? Believe that it'll be worth it. So if Kate was actually there needs to be a reward. We need to build, if we're going to push into discomfort, there needs to be something that we get back. And what I teach people is that the achievement and pushing into discomfort will make you magnetic. Either an opportunity or people will come towards you because people are attracted to determination. Love is not romantic love. We're not going to talk about that, right? Love is about loving what you do, right? It's about the execution of your special skills, and the things that we're most proud of is when where our skills are at our best. And PERMA is something that we're about to unpack in the next section. So Kate, in 2021, like, tell me a story about how you became magnetic.
I think that I like to think of myself as a bit of a connector. So I think just even flowing on from what we've been talking about with everything going on in Queensland, the one thing that I felt that I was able to connect with people was when I received just a message to say that one of our Sydney-based clients saw their sign up in Queensland and were just so grateful to be able to still see that recognised on broadcast. And they were just like, don't know how you did it, but you did it. And that was really special to them. So I think just being able to, I guess, service the clients still, even with the challenges that we were dealing with, was definitely one way that I was able to connect with people around me.
Yeah, so that's, and getting that feedback from clients is definitely like how people are drawn to you, and like your people skills, like you wouldn't be in the role if you didn't have exceptional people skills, is like how you love what you do. Very, thank you. All right, so then if you look back at your personal challenge, right, and or if you're thinking about like if you're a leader of a team and like how you will coach teams through a big complex challenge, like the way I look at people and challenges is through these 3 beliefs. And yes, you need all 9, all right, but there's a way that you build them, like as in like if someone's lacking in one of them, well, you've got to start at the start. They have to believe they can do it before you can move on. So again, like my coaching career started with coaching executives who need to lose 20 to 30 kilograms. They didn't come to me optimistic. They had tried and failed. I had to teach them how to be optimistic, encourage them to step up, and then and support them when they fall over. And you have to do the same with your team if they're facing immense challenges. But if they can do that, well, then you step to the next level. And maybe like they can do what they believe, but they're just making excuses, or they're not engaged in a game that like is got them into the rough and tumble. Or maybe like they're really good. They've been doing what they've been doing for the last 20 years and they're refusing to learn the new way, right? We've got to clear that, right? And that's your next step, right? But then also like you get people who are really highly capable, but they're just playing in the sandpit like really badly with the boys and girls, right? They're just not making friends, and they're not realizing that work can be actually so much more enjoyable if you'll bring people with you. Like if you allow them in and allow like you got to become magnetic, right? You're just going to bring people with you, bring them on the journey, sharing the achievements, and there's definitely some skills in doing that. But then also Australians are not great at positive language, like not great at being self-fans and then saying, you know what, I'm really good at this and I love doing this, right? And if you can't say that like you enjoy the stuff that you're doing at work, well, then you won't get PERMA, which we'll talk about in a sec. But then why is this important, right? Is this one, right? This one, if you know the hero's journey, you'll get this. And if you don't, you need to go watch it. It's a 5-minute video on TED Ed, right? But why Star Wars, Superman, like Batman, Harry Potter, why they all have the same plot line is that we gravitate towards this storytelling framework, which is the hero's journey. And like, you'll know it, like there's a hero, they are called to a challenge, they get the help of someone older and wiser, they face adversity, they potentially nearly die, they rebuild themselves only to return to their home, and they're upgraded as a hero. They rest and then they do it all over again. Like when you're Batman, you don't stop being Batman, you just keep on facing challenges, right? And then that's what Unbreakable is about. And that's about like teaching people to go through this storytelling arc. And then even better, like having that storytelling arc in your head. So when you face challenges, you go, hang on, like I've been here. Like I remember this really hard challenge and I got optimism this way. And you can point it back to your challenges and your successes in your history. I go, yeah, that's why I can do the next challenge. And now I coach leaders on how to actually share their story, to authentically let teams in to like their challenges, their battles, and let the team into the story so that they gravitate towards them and are encouraged by the leader's story in facing their own challenges. So here, Dane Laurie scoring again, like what, you're not going to tell this, but if we had time, like what I'd be doing with you is crafting your own story, right? And not necessarily so that you give the rah-rah speech, but so that it's like really crystal clear in your head about this is how I overcome challenges. All right, and that's how mentally I coach people to become unbreakable. All right, so then we move into the emotional side, and this is the mental health continuum, right? Well, your mental health is not a fixed state. It's always sliding along this continuum where hopefully we're in the green most of the time, but if you see there in the symptoms there of the yellow, like irritable, impatient, nervous, sad, increased worrying, procrastination, we can all be guilty of that. And then obviously it goes down into the orange and then red. Now, hopefully in your work situation, there is supportive structures for people who find themselves in the orange and the red. Now, what I've created here is a model for helping people who are in the green, who are in the yellow, and making sure they go back to the green. Or for people who find themselves in the red, who then get to the orange, and then we need to coach them to then go back into the yellow and then the green. All right, so you can see there in the middle line what the intervention is. So orange and red is professional care, like it's way beyond my scope. But self-care and social support is what you need to do to facilitate the green and the yellow. All right. Now, self-care is not a word that I would use, but that top line there, recovery, covers self-care. I just train like competitive A types, right? And if you ask a competitive A type, how's your self-care? They might tell you to fuck off because it's just not a language that they're going to actually resonate with. But when you actually say, hey, this is how you physically recover to perform, well, you've got a chance. All right. And so I'm just trying to create a language here that get people to do what everyone knows like is the right thing. So this is physical self-care. Mental self-care is those 9 skills. Now in my book, which you'll get a copy of, is what I've done is unpacked 3 beliefs into 9 skills, and every skill has 5 things you can do to develop optimism or the skill that it's attached to. But more interestingly, in this situation, what I'm coaching people to do is listen out for the opposite. Like, so if you've got a pessimist, if you've got someone who thinks that low results happen every time, they extend to every element of their life, and no matter what they do, they can't have control. The man in the arena is about letting other people's voices in. If they let other people's voices in, if they use positive language, not at a ratio of 3 to 1, they use positive statements at a ratio of 1 positive statement to 1 negative statement. If they're never proud of their effort and they can't get out of their own way with inertia, they're always doing the things they've always done, no matter what the result, you've actually got a problem. Like you have someone who is sliding to the right of this scale. And so talking about early intervention and talking about how a team could collectively support each other is being sensitive to language and the power of the words that people use and looking out for this. Like asking people, are you okay, once a year just doesn't work, right? It needs to be a much more complete solution than that. But then to come back to like what I said at the very start. Now you might look at that and go, man, Jonathan, that's super hard, right? That's a lot of coaching, and you're right? There's an experienced coach that would be able to like have to teach that system. But what is preventative for mental health is, again, PERMA. And now I asked you to describe that in your non-work life, but now I'm going to ask you to think about that in your work life. And so again, go to pen and paper, and I guess you're right, PERMA. And I want you to think about how you get positive emotion at work. And the definition is a little bit different. Like it's about how you get intellectual stimulation. Like what are the problems at work which you like? I love figuring that out. Like it's probably related to your special skill and like unique skills, but like that is positive emotion at work. Engagement. Like what is the thing, what's the element of your role that makes the rest of the world drop away? Now I get it presenting, normally in a room, like not here in like my apartment, but it makes the rest of the world drop away. And it's a perfect match of my skills and the challenge. The next one is like relationships. Who's your best friend at work? All right, we need this. Like, and there's a big challenge here, work from home, how to cultivate that. But that's really important. All right, then meaning. Now, some organizations have a very community-centered goal, like the Tigers do here, but like not all organizations have that. But how can your organization have a mission that like enriches the lives of others? And maybe it's not your organization, maybe it's a team one, and maybe just your direct reports or like the people you work closely with can band together and like create meaning. All right, and the last one's achievement. We want to feel progress and achievement in our work lives, and this one we get a fair bit, but it can't be the only one. Like just like in your non-work life, it's easy to fall into the trap that we think that fulfillment comes from all positive emotion. At work, we can fall into the trap that we think that like it only comes through achievement, and like just the science says it doesn't. You need all 5 elements. All right, so bringing to just about to close, we're going to wrap up. But so what I'm doing here is creating a different language. All right, so think about how your development goal, right? We started with that. Like, just imagine if like you're in a team and like we're working together and like what our mission is for the next, X amount of weeks is like, we're going to do this, right? How we're going to practice this is actually in our physical life. And we can practice whatever our goal is, like outside work and inside work, right? If you're facing the big challenge, well then, we start to learn the language of the 3 beliefs and the process for overcoming big challenges. And we do it in a way and we design workspaces so that we can have PERMA, right? This is what, this is my mission, right? To spread this idea. And so if you imagine this team, right, and the quality of the relationships, and this is the biggest benefit, the quality of relationships that happens once you execute those things, like you just have better conversations. And the conversation that like needs to happen, or like if you're interested in improving performance, needs to be about engagement. Now, you might measure engagement in many different ways, but this is the Q12 produced by Gallup, and it's the framework that resonates with me the most because of this, like build small challenges then building up. All right, so just imagine the quality of the conversation, like once you develop the team in that way, and then you ask them like, do they know what is expected of them at work? Like, do they have the materials and equipment that they need to do their work right? Once you can get that like set, then you have the launch pad to go up, up and up. You can imagine if a team's at each other and tired and worn out and there's not so much unison, or unity, like these conversations could end up with bickering and like there's going to be a lower quality conversation. All right. And then so once you get the basic needs, you can then go to the individual needs where people want the opportunity to do what they do best. They get praise, people care about them, and someone's focused on their development. Right, once you focus on the individual, then you work on the team, right? And then like they have a best friend, the co-workers are all working together and doing their best. They have a great mission, and at work their opinions seem to count. And then you've got a really solid team, and then you can focus on growth. So this, like, yes, you could go straight to this, right? And I'm sure if you work with Gallup, they would, right? But it's my belief that like, if you can look after the individual and look after the person, like their well-being first, well, then you can see that there's similarities in what I just shared with you, and then how it immediately plugs into engagement. And I don't need to tell a group like this, like engagement equals performance. All right, so that is my religion, right? This is how I put it all together, that your physical health is the foundation of mental performance and emotional well-being. If you have a question, like I'd love to hear it. Thank you for your time. And if you want to stick around, I'm here for as long as you need.
Mate, I've probably got a quick one. Obviously, you just touched on, growing teams through engagement. I think one of the biggest challenges, obviously, during this period has been that face-to-face interaction. And whilst, technologies like Zoom have really enabled us to, I guess, facilitate that engagement, mate, what would be maybe a few quick wins outside of those technological pieces that you'd recommend to, I guess, promote engagement within teams?
Well, so if I was controlling engagement, I'd just follow the process, right? So If you look at like Kate's story about like transferring the game to Brisbane, like there needed to be a meeting of like, okay, what is expected of this? Like what are we going to do? There's another conversation with like parents who are homeschooling, and whether or not the expectations of like their role actually changed because the demands on their time have changed. Like the quick wins are starting at the bottom. Like you got to build the foundation. I don't think that like if you talk to people about their best friend when they don't have everything they need to do their job, well, it's sort of a bit of a moot point. Like your fitness and like your health, you got to build a strong foundation first.
Thanks, mate. Probably just to the rest of the group, if you've got any questions, obviously, feel free to speak up now or forever hold your peace.
Cool. So this is, so how long do we have, Luke?
Got a few more minutes.
Okay, cool. So this is, if we go back to the Dane Laurie slides, I don't know if I'm going to be able to slide quick enough. All right, so we got everyone to enter their development goal. All right, so then if you look at your notes, like your PRS is next, right? So no matter how many points you got, I want everyone to commit here to like put it in the chat. What's the first PRS point or the next PRS point they go to get? So if you remember at the start, it was from sleep, mental practice, physical restoration, social support, environment, mobility, stability, conditioning, skill, or nutrition. So put in the chat, like, which is the focus that you're going to commit to next? Luke, I want to see yours up first.
Sorry, mate. I thought I did send it, but I sent it directly to someone on the call.
All right, environment, that's perfect. Social. Yeah, having a chat with your mates, that's definitely important. Yeah, cheers, Theo. Yeah, mental, that's always my focus too. Sleep, big one. Yeah, nutrition, there's plenty to get into there with nutrition. Cool. Enjoying outdoors. There, perfect. All right, so then if you look at the next one, the 3 beliefs. If I scroll fast enough, I've gone the wrong way. So the 3 beliefs is believe you can do it, believe you know how, and believe that it'll be worth it. Okay, so there we go. If you think about where you are on the challenge that you set, like the development goal, where would you commit to one of those 3 things, developing one of those? Are you at the start of the journey? You can do it. Or Luke Matthews has gone there, playfulness. He's gone straight into the skill. So he believes, he's not taking any excuses, and now it's just into the game. All right, so think about your development goal, and then where are you on this journey? Grit, thanks, Dan. Perfect. Grit, thanks, Linda. Your optimism, perfect. All right, so just starting out. Yeah, so right in between courage and grit there, perfect. Cool. All right, and then mastery, cheers, JR. Okay, and then here, this last one. All right, so developing this new language, right? So with PERMA, and we'll end with this, all right? So can you give me one element of your job that gives you PERMA? Right? It could be any one of those 5 things. So can you name a thing that gives you positive emotion? Or can you name something that like gives you engagement? Can you name a part of your job that you build great relationships? Yeah, perfect. Finding solutions for clients, great. Yeah, positive emotion from Luke, overcoming problems for partners. Accomplishment, excellent. Yeah, developing young professionals, awesome, JR. The smile is nice. I like it. Where's Nathan? Is Nathan a Tigers employee?
Yep.
Yeah. I thought that. I picked up that photo of like the players and the community like interacting, and I like that warms my heart too. Now JR's getting cocky. Who's going to save the money? Cool. So, like, I'll bring this to close. I'm sure Luke will have a few words to say, but basically, like, there's a whole lot of frameworks and there's a lot of depth. Like, I could have, broke that down and gone deep onto any one of those slides. And look, it's a lot. I know it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to conceptually digest. But if you've got a question, like my email is jonathan@unbreakable.team. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to chat to you about this or how like I came up with like the logic behind it. And I would love the opportunity to help you in any way possible in achieving what I presented here.
No, thanks, mate. And look, on behalf of the club, I really wanted to thank you for your time today. As I said at the top of the call, our history goes back a long way, but the friendship and the lessons that we continue to learn from one another is truly appreciated. I know that we've also been obviously joined by a number of internal and external stakeholders to West Tigers today. So again, just on behalf of those individuals, I'd really like to thank you for the insights and time. As Jonathan said, if you do want to reach out to him, feel free to contact him directly, or similarly reach out to our team, Josh, John, or Kate. We've been obviously recording this session. We'll be sure to send out a copy to you following today. And I really hope that you've enjoyed the content covered today. We'll continue to deliver these types of pieces from the club. I think it's really important that we all stick together and support one another during what obviously has been a really challenging time. So on that note, again, thank you to you all. I hope you all remain safe, healthy, as well as your families, and look forward to joining you again in the not too distant future. Thank you all.
Cheers, Luke.
Thanks, mate.